get down to business. We're continuing our Lenten sermon series on fear, in which we took a look at the people that Jesus encountered on his way to the cross, and some of the fears that they had to overcome just to get closer to him. And we're going to continue that today, kind of. First, I want to talk to you about the history of a specific date. Are you ready? February 26th. Everybody knows February 26th, right? Did you know that on February 26, 1815, Napoleon Bonaparte escaped from exile on the island of Elba and headed back to France in a bid to gain power? On February 26, 1929, President Calvin Coolidge signed a measure to establish the Grand Teton National Park in Wyoming. On February 26, in 1952, Prime Minister Winston Churchill announced that Britain had developed its own atomic bomb. And in 1993, on February 26, a bomb exploded in the parking garage at the World Trade Center. And also on that day, my mom died. February 26, 1993. And to be honest, I don't remember any of the headlines from the bombing. Not one of them. So I can go back and look at them and go, wow, this was a big deal. There's newscasts, headlines, articles, all of these things. I remember none of it. And you know what was really odd to me? I remember having the thought, as we were headed to the hospital, seeing people going about their day-to-day lives. How is that possible? What are you doing? Where are they going? People driving, people working, doing all of their everyday things on the day that my life turned upside down. And it took me quite some time to recognize that for anyone who didn't know my mom, it was Friday, February 26th, a day to go to the dentist, the doctor, get groceries, run errands, go to work, last day of the work week. It was just another Friday. Let's look at Mark chapter 15, verses 33 through 39. At noon, darkness came over the whole land until 3 in the afternoon. And at 3 in the afternoon, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, my God, why have you forsaken me?" When some of those standing near heard this, they said, "Listen, he's calling Elijah." Someone ran and filled a sponge with wine vinegar, put it on a staff, and offered it to Jesus to drink. "And now leave him alone. Let's see if Elijah comes to take him down." And with a loud cry, Jesus breathed his last. The curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. And when the centurion who stood there in front of Jesus saw how he died, he said, "Surely this man is the Son of God." Can you imagine what it was like to be there when all of this took place? Can you imagine the things that you would have seen? The streaks of blood on Jesus' face. The splintered wood of the crossbeam. Can you imagine the sounds, the pounding of hammer on nails, the wailing of the women? Can you imagine the raw emotions of anger and grief and shock? If we'd been there, could we have even understood the magnitude of what was happening? For the people that were there that actually saw it, had been devastating, heart-wrenching to see. Well, that is, except for one guy. That centurion that was standing there. For him, it wasn't death of the Messiah. It was just another day of punishing criminals, dealing with traitors to the Roman Empire. It wasn't Good Friday. It wasn't a bad Friday. It was just another Friday. Much like all the people that I saw on that day that my mom passed. The centurion was just going about his business. This crucifixion didn't bother him in the least. It probably bothered him as much as He was a Jew. He was a criminal. He wasn't worthy of a second look, and he certainly wasn't worthy of the fuss that was being made over him. And yet, Mark tells us when he saw how Jesus died. Now, I'm sure you've probably guessed that our character for today is that centurion at the foot of the cross. He isn't dealing so much with outright fear like we've been talking about the last couple weeks. He basically has a general feeling of disdain or dismissal. He doesn't even see Jesus. To the centurion, Jesus isn't a person. He's a task. He's a place on his to-do list that he has to mark off. And yet, when he saw how Jesus died, the centurion was a ranking officer in the Roman army. He would have been in charge of like 100 men. He would have been a career soldier, well paid, well thought of within the empire. He had probably fought many battles, seen many men die, and probably killed quite a few by his own hand. So this day wasn't any different. This wasn't murder. This was a day at work, and probably not a very good day at work for him. It was simply Friday. He didn't care about Jesus. Maybe he didn't even know who he was. What could he know? He knew that this man was a Jew. He knew he was a criminal. This man was going to die because of those things. That's all that mattered. Jesus, the person, did not matter because he was not like the centurion. He didn't look like him. He didn't act like him. He didn't believe that Caesar was the Savior like him. Jesus was different. What does it mean to be different? Anybody? Anybody got anything? What's it mean to be different? Well, I found this story on Facebook, and I just loved it, and I couldn't wait to use it in a sermon. I finally found a reason, and so I was super excited. So there's two kindergartners in the same class, best of friends. Okay, I think we have a picture. Yes, we do. Best of friends. And they decided one day that they were going to go and get the same haircut. You know why? So their teacher couldn't tell them apart. They were so excited and went and got this haircut and couldn't stop giggling when they were getting ready to go in and greet their teacher. Because she always said there were two peas in a pod. And this is what they did. They decided they were the same. The haircut was going to make them identical. So what does it mean to be different? In our world today, we're encouraged to see people who are not like us as others. If they don't look like us, if they don't believe like us, if they don't live like us, they are the other. And we're told that we should fear the other because the other wants to do us harm. Because, wrong page. Because we are the other to them. Get them before they get us is our mentality. The boys in the story, they did just the opposite. They assumed that they were exactly the same. Now, the centurion had dealt with a lot of Jews in his day, and because he was stationed in Jerusalem, he saw this all the time. His job was to keep the Jews in check so that they didn't cause problems for the Roman rulers. He probably whipped them. We know that he jailed them, and we obviously know that he crucified some. He'd heard their taunts, watched them spit on him, felt their hatred. Oh yeah, he knew what Jews were like. And yet, when he saw how Jesus died, he'd probably been with Jesus all day. So he would have seen him get beaten, mocked, disrobed, weighed down with that crown of thorns. And yet, he never once saw Jesus retaliate, say anything angry. He didn't spit. The centurion had watched Jesus make his way through the streets of Jerusalem to Golgotha, heard the pounding of the nails through flesh and bone, saw the blood and sweat on Jesus. But he also heard heard Jesus say, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." He prays for his killers? Who does that? He also heard Jesus bring together his mother and the disciple John, making sure that they would look after one another when he was gone. He looked into Jesus' face when Jesus said, "It is finished," and let out a loud cry. He saw how Jesus died. Earlier, we asked, what does it mean to be different? And we said that people who don't look like us, who don't believe like us, who don't do what we do. I believe that Jesus did something to that centurion. He interrupted his beliefs, his assumptions about Jews. For the first time in his life, the centurion wasn't dealing with a faceless group of people. He was dealing with Jesus. And when he saw him for what he was and not what everybody said he was, he saw something that led him to say, truly, this man was God's son. To me, one of the greatest statements of faith that's in the Bible. And from that moment forward, his understanding of Jesus and of Jews in general was changed. They were no longer the other. They were human beings. So who is the other to you? For many of us, it's Syrian refugees or Mexican immigrants. For others, it may be people that are Muslim or Hindi. For some others, the other is actually a Republican or a Democrat. Or maybe it's a young African American in a hoodie, or an elderly person with Alzheimer's. Maybe it's that homeless person that you pass each and every day. Maybe they are the other. It is difficult for most of us, but can we at least admit that we have an other that causes us to feel uncomfortable, that may even cause us fear? We said earlier that we're told to fear the other because they might hurt us. They might do harm. They might take over our country. And we are conditioned to cross the street to avoid them, to not waste time helping them. But I don't think that's the real source of the fear. I think the real fear is that if we decide to actually open up, if we decide to actually engage the other and get to know them, we'll find out that we're pretty similar. And I think that scares us even more. If we're willing to recognize our other, we have two choices. And one is to ignore what we've learned and continue on living in fear. That's our first choice. Our second choice would be to change our beliefs and our perceptions. But there are consequences that come with that. If you change your beliefs, the centurion who pledged his allegiance to serving Rome, what would happen to him? If he calls Jesus the Son of God, which we know he did, what could have happened to him? He could have met the same fate as Jesus. That's how big this was. This was not a small thing. So for him to change his assumption about Jesus, about Jews, may cost him his life. We don't know what really happens to him after the crucifixion. We don't know if he rejects his allegiance to Caesar and follows Jesus, or maybe he ignored it. Everything that he experienced and continued his service to Rome. We don't know. We know that the second choice is easier. It's safer to continue living in those beliefs that we've held on to for so long. Because if we do that, we don't lose friends. We don't risk anything if we hang on to those same fears and those same beliefs. If we change them, that might change our world. And we're not sure we're ready for that. That's where the fear lies. So what do we stand to lose? I don't know. But can you truly be obedient to God's word if you're limiting who you come in contact with, who you engage with? If you disregard others because they're not like you, does that push you away from God? Just a couple of reminders for you. John 13:34. A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. 1 Corinthians 16:14. Do everything in love. 1 Peter 5:4. Above all, love each other deeply because love covers a multitude of sins. 1 John 3:11. This is the message you heard from the beginning. We should love one another. 1 John 3:18. Dear children, let us not love with words or tongue, but with actions and in truth. And lastly, Matthew 22:37-40. Love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, with all of your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. If we are willing to come face to face with our other, to see them as human, to hear their stories and see how their stories overlap with ours, to discover the commonalities and the connections that we share, we still have that choice. Either we ignore all of that and continue on pretending that we don't know that they're human, or we move forward. We move past our fear. We move into engagement with them, finding out who they are. There's a Christian singer, his name is Chris Rice, and he sings about this exact dilemma in a song called The Face of Christ. And this is just a portion of his lyrics, but listen. See, you had no choice which day you would be born, or the color of your skin, or what planet you'd be on. Would your mind be strong? Would your eyes be blue or brown? Whether daddy would be rich or if mama stuck around. So if you find yourself in a better place, you can't look down on the frown on the other guy's face. You got to stoop down low, look him square in the eye, and get a funny feeling, because you might be dealing with the face of Christ. Do you ever think about that? The person that you think you know something about, you're scared of, they frighten you, that may be the face of Christ. So you have that choice. Fearing the other or moving past your fears, it's up to you. But we have that opportunity to look into the face of our other, to enter into conversation with them. But it might interrupt your beliefs. And you have to do something. Who could you invite to coffee? Who might you stop and have a conversation with? I wonder what would happen if we took the time to get to know them, even though we're scared. Instead of crucifying them in the media or on Facebook, in our own minds, I wonder what would happen if we heard those stories, walked those journeys, looked them square in the eye. Well, your challenge this week, should you choose to accept it, you have an opportunity to change your perception, your beliefs about someone, somewhere, to move from fear to understanding, to talk to them instead of talking about them. And what might happen if you look them in the eye? You might just find it's no longer just another Friday. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for your presence in this place. The words that you speak through the music and the message. Father, we can't do this life without you, and we certainly can't face our fears without you. Father, I ask that you just strengthen each one of us to face at least one fear this week, so that we can move one step closer to your Son, Jesus Christ. We pray all of this in that powerful name. Amen.